Our relationships with animals are, well, they're complicated, aren't they? They're full of contradictions. We love them, we bring them into our homes, but then we also use them in ways that it's just really hard to square those two things. So today, we're going to dive deep into this whole world of animal rights and welfare. We'll be using the incredible Encyclopedia of Animal Rights and Animal Welfare as our guide to try and make sense of it all.
And really, there's no better place to kick things off than with this quote from the one and only Jane Goodall. Give animals the respect that, as sentient beings, is their due. This single idea, right here, it's everything. The idea that animals are sentient, that they feel, that they experience the world, that's the bedrock for this entire explainer. We're going to come back to this again and again.
All right, Section 1, a complicated relationship. To really get to the heart of just how strange our relationship with animals can be, we don't need to get all theoretical. No, instead, let's look at a story. It's a tragic, real-life story about a chimpanzee named Travis.
So Travis was basically a local celebrity. I mean, he lived this seemingly perfect life in a human home. But then, one day in 2009, that story just completely shattered. It took a really horrific, violent turn, and it sent absolute shockwaves through the community, raising some deeply uncomfortable questions.
I mean, look at this. He drank wine from a stemmed glass. He brushed his teeth with a water pick. For all intents and purposes, he was treated like a human child. And that's exactly what makes the end of his story so absolutely jarring. After the attack, the very woman who raised him stabbed him, and then he was shot by the police. That disconnect, it just forces you to ask a really fundamental question.
So what was he? Was he a pet, a quirky member of the family, or was he a wild animal just playing a role? How we answer this question, well, that gets right to the heart of a really common and frankly often dangerous misunderstanding we have about animals.
Okay, this is where we hit on a really crucial distinction. See, Travis was socialized. He learned to live with people. But, and this is a huge but, he was never domesticated. Domestication is a whole different ballgame. We're talking about an evolutionary process, something that changes a species' genes over thousands and thousands of years. Travis, he still had all his wild genes. He had the instincts of a wild animal, and mistaking one for the other, well, it had deadly consequences, and it just perfectly sums up our own confusion.
The editor of the encyclopedia we're using, Mark Bekoff, actually has a name for this. He calls it moral schizophrenia. And it kind of makes sense, right? It's like we have this incredible capacity for love and empathy for some animals, but at the same time, we're totally okay with the suffering of others. Think about it. Travis was loved as long as he acted like a person, but the second he acted like a chimpanzee, he was killed.
All right, Section 2, a new understanding. Now, this moral schizophrenia, this confusion we have, it's being challenged. And it's being challenged by a tidal wave of new science that is just completely changing what we thought we knew about what goes on inside an animal's mind.
So it turns out, just like Jane Goodall has been saying for decades, that we're not so special after all. Science is basically confirming what a lot of us have suspected all along. Things we thought were uniquely human, personalities, rational thought, complex emotions, they're everywhere in the animal kingdom. That clear line we thought existed between us and them, it's getting blurrier and blurrier every single day.
And some of these discoveries are just wow. I mean, mice feel empathy for other mice. Whales have the same specialized brain cells for processing emotion that we once thought were unique to us and great apes. Fish have distinct personalities and long-term memories. And get this, some birds are better tool users and can plan for the future even more effectively than chimps. Every single one of these discoveries just chips away at that old idea that we're completely unique.
So, what does all this boil down to? It boils down to this one word: sentience. This is the whole ballgame. It's not about whether an animal can do your taxes, right? It's about the capacity to feel, to perceive, to have subjective experiences, things like pain, joy, fear. This one idea is at the very core of the entire debate about what we owe to other animals. Okay, Section 3, a world of contradictions. So on one hand, we have this new science telling us that animals are feeling, thinking beings. But on the other hand, well, that understanding crashes right into the enormous and often contradictory ways we actually interact with them every single day.
Let's start with food. I mean, we raise billions upon billions of animals for food every single year. And a lot of them are in factory farms, where that whole idea we just talked about, sentience, their capacity to feel,
It's just ignored. It's pushed aside for the sake of efficiency. Then there's entertainment. We put them in zoos, we make them do tricks in circuses and rodeos, all of it, really, for our amusement.
And what about science? We use them in labs to test, well, everything, from life-saving medicines to cosmetics. We subject them to procedures we would never, ever dream of performing on a human being.
And this brings us to the really sharp end of the contradiction, summed up perfectly here by legal scholar Gary Francione. Most of us would say, yeah, of course we shouldn't inflict unnecessary suffering. But his point is that almost all, 99.99% of the suffering we inflict, it just can't be justified, not by any logical, consistent moral standard. There's this massive Grand Canyon between what we say we believe and what we actually do.
Okay, Section 4, a shifting landscape. So how does all this contradiction and conflict play out in our laws and regulations? Well, it's definitely not a simple story. It's more like a constant tug-of-war between real progress and some really deep-rooted problems.
And this right here just perfectly illustrates the problem. Let's look at the main federal law in the US that's supposed to protect research animals, the Animal Welfare Act. Sounds good, right? Its purpose is to protect these animals. But then you have to ask, which animals does it actually protect? And this is where it gets crazy. The law was specifically changed to exclude birds, rats, and mice bred for research. In other words, the vast majority of animals used in labs are not even considered animals under the law that's supposed to protect them. It's wild.
And for the small percentage of animals that are covered, well, it's not great news. Violations of that very act have shot up by 90% in the last 5 years. 90%. That kind of suggests that even when there are rules, enforcing them is a whole other problem.
But okay, it's not all doom and gloom. On the other side of the coin, there are absolutely clear signs of progress. I mean, look at this. In 2008, Spain actually extended legal rights to great apes, the right to life and liberty. That same year, California voters passed Prop 2, which requires that farm animals have enough room to just stand up and turn around. And in 2009, the US banned the use of so-called downer cows for food. So things are changing. The landscape is definitely shifting, even if it feels slow sometimes.
Okay, last section, our compassion footprint. So with all this complexity, the science, the contradictions, the legal battles, where does that leave us? As individuals? Well, the encyclopedia makes a powerful point. This isn't just a job for governments or scientists. It really comes back to each of us, to our personal choices and our own impact.
And this impact isn't just some abstract ethical thing. It's massively environmental. Just look at this chart. The numbers don't lie. Producing 1 pound of beef creates more than 10 times the emissions of chicken and 100 times the emissions of carrots. It's a huge difference. So the choices we make every day at the grocery store, they have a very real, very measurable impact on the planet.
And that brings us to a final, really powerful idea from the encyclopedia's editor, Mark Bekoff. We all know about our carbon footprint, right? Well, he suggests we should also start thinking about our compassion footprint. What is that? It's basically the sum total of our impact, good and bad, on the well-being of every other being. The goal, he says, is to consciously try and make that footprint one of kindness and respect.
So we'll leave you with this final, really thought-provoking question, which is adapted from the work of Paul Shepard. Think about it. Throughout all of human history, animals have been absolutely essential to our own development, to our cultures, our identity, everything. So the big question at the end of the day isn't just what we're doing to them, it's what our treatment of them says about us.